Welcome to Pittsburgh Earth Days, the Dirt Podcast, featuring Grant Ervin, live from the Point Park University Center for Media Innovation. Here is your host, Grant Ervin.
Hello, and welcome to the next installment of the Dirt Podcast. I'm Grant Ervin from S&B USA. So we're super excited to be here at the Center for Media Innovation at Point Park University on a beautiful summer day in downtown Pittsburgh. Today I have with me our guest, Leslie Hyde, the Senior Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer for Koppers. Leslie, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you.
So wonderful for you to join us here in the Dirt. And I understand it's your first podcast. Is that correct?
It is, yeah. Happy
Super.
to be here.
Yeah. All right. We love newbies on the podcast circuit here. So we're excited to have you and to talk about all the dirt that is going on with you guys over at Koppers. And, super excited to learn about the company and the work that you're leading there. So happy to be here with us today.
Sounds great.
So maybe to get started, one of the things that I'm really interested in is Koppers itself. I want to learn about you and learn about the company. Koppers, when I think about it, is this iconic Pittsburgh brand that we see the sign, on the buildings here in downtown Pittsburgh, and so there's a lot of visibility. But I learned a lot in my research for the show here that I had no idea about. So we're looking to kind of peel the bark back on that a little bit, maybe a kind of a pun there. But you guys are a leading company in the wood products industry and have really been a leader in what has become a term that's in vogue right now in the circular economy. But the truth is, you guys have been doing circular economy work from the get-go, and so you're way ahead of the curve in that regard. And maybe just a little factoid for our listeners here. I learned that 75% of all products are either recycled or reused wood products. Is that right?
That's not quite right.
Not quite right? Okay.
So it's 75% of our products by revenue are made from recycled or repurposed products.
Wow, so it's even better. That's amazing. And then, the other thing, too, is that you were just recently recognized by Newsweek as one of the leaders in responsible companies in America, correct?
We were, and it was actually our second time.
Wow, congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
Right here in our own backyard. So there's a lot of accolades that we want to be able to unpack, but maybe let's start with your journey and talk a little bit about kind of your background and what led you into the role as being the Senior Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer for Koppers.
Sure. So I've always been interested in the environment, even from when I was a little kid. I somehow had the feeling I was going to be involved in something related to the environment. And so my degree is in civil engineering because back then they didn't have environmental engineering degrees, but there was a lot of environmental engineering associated with it. So I joined Koppers 20 years ago, actually 21 years ago, in their environmental group, doing the typical things that environmental engineers do in industry, remediation, compliance, just making sure the company was following the rules associated with the environment, and was promoted into roles of greater responsibility in the EH&S field, environmental health and safety field, and ended up being the vice president of safety, health, and environmental affairs for Koppers. Moved out of that into strategic planning and risk management, kind of a little bit out of my focus area or my comfort area, but I always try to learn something from any position I'm in and take something on to the next position. So, risk fits in with environment and in a manufacturing company, and that kind of connects to what you do about that. And I talk a lot about sustainability in my work, and so when the company decided to focus on sustainability, the CEO, Leroy Abal, asked me to be the first Chief Sustainability Officer for Koppers.
That's awesome. As part of that, you've seen different evolutions in kind of that 20-year history. And so, going from what was called environmental health and safety and then into risk management and then into this, sustainability space, is there much that's different or new, or is it terminology, or can you talk about that trajectory, I guess?
So I think I think a lot of people see a difference from environmental affairs, I would call it, to sustainability, I see it as a continuum. So when I joined in the environmental role, I was always looking to go what we called beyond compliance. So we knew we had to be in compliance. Those are the laws. You have to follow the laws. But we wanted to do things better than that. And so we started working on things like waste management, waste minimization, air emissions controls, water management, those types of things. But that was all under the umbrella of environment.
Okay.
Well, if you think about sustainability, sustainability is really just kind of the bigger picture of all of that. And a lot of those things are part of sustainability too. So waste minimization, trying to make sure, trying to minimize the amount of waste that goes to landfills, trying to protect the water, minimize the amount of water you use, be most efficient in the way you use water, trying to minimize your emissions. All of those are part of sustainability. But of course, I see sustainability as a much broader concept in that, and that's why I say it's kind of on a continuum. So, you start with compliance, and you end with, well, you don't end, but you get to sustainability.
Interesting.
And then with sustainability, you just kind of keep going. It's all about improvement and doing things better, and just keeping that focus in mind of you want to minimize your impact on the world.
That's interesting. Well, as I mentioned in the intro, Koppers is a very familiar Pittsburgh name, but could you tell us about the company, and in terms of both the history and some of the origins maybe, and then the products and services that you all provide?
Sure. So Koppers is a global company. We are headquartered in Pittsburgh and have been headquartered in Pittsburgh since our founding. We are the current Koppers Inc. is kind of it was a buyout from the old Koppers company. So we are not the Koppers company. We are a different company, but that is in our history. And so you mentioned earlier, our roots are in sustainability. So Heinrich Koppers, who is the founder of Koppers Company, invented a new way to a new type of coke oven. So producing coke for steel manufacturing produces a lot of emissions. And he developed a way to capture those emissions and condense them and create this material called coal tar. And coal tar is then distilled into a number of other products that are used in aluminum manufacturing, steel manufacturing, cement, wood technology. So Heinrich Koppers was the one who invented that. So I always tell people this is in our DNA. Sustainability is in our DNA. And so we have built on that, and we've moved into other areas now. So we're now more of a wood technology company than we are a subsidiary of the Coke industry. And in wood technologies, we've taken that same concept. So we use recycled copper in our wood treatment chemicals.
Okay.
We use millions of pounds of recycled copper a year.
Wow.
And we produce chemicals that preserve wood. So they preserve railroad ties, utility poles, and even the wood that's on your backyard deck.
Okay.
Those chemicals come from Koppers.
And the purpose of that is to basically increase the longevity of the wood?
That's right.
Okay. And what are some of those markets look like, both domestically and globally? You talked a little bit about utility poles and the like, but is that in all sorts of construction areas, or everywhere you see wood, is there a Koppers product?
Everywhere you see wood, there could be a Koppers product.
We're working on it. Okay.
Yeah, we're working on it. So the railroad ties are preserved with creosote. Utility poles, so the poles that bring electricity or digital connectivity into our homes. Those poles are we do the wood preserving ourselves, but we also produce the chemicals that go into those poles. And then, like I mentioned, residential wood for decks, for walkways. I was just in the national parks. A lot of walkways are made out of wood,
Right.
and it's preserved so that it lasts longer.
That's amazing. So you could literally see a Koppers, the influence of Koppers or a Koppers product just about everywhere then.
You can. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
And it impacts your life. So, railroad ties, you don't think about railroad ties and how they impact you, but, what percentage of our goods and services are transported by rail to get to, the stores that we shop at.
Exactly. So it's a major component of the logistics industry, just a major piece of the global economy, period.
That's right. That's right.
Now, you said it's a global company. Like, what's and the headquarters are here in Pittsburgh. Is there still manufacturing happening here in Pittsburgh? Or do you have to be close to the markets that you're involved in, or what does that footprint look like?
We don't have any manufacturing in Pittsburgh. We used to, but you do have to be close to kind of the end use of your products. So,
Okay.
So we have facilities throughout the United States and Canada. We have facilities in Europe and in Australia and New Zealand.
Interesting. So that's a big reach then.
Yeah.
Do you get to kind of travel around and be on site at places, or is most of your activity here in Pittsburgh?
Now most of my activity is in Pittsburgh, but when I was in the environmental field, the safety field, I did a lot of traveling around. So yeah, Australia is beautiful.
That's great. So one of the things that we've seen, we touch upon this on The Dirt with a lot of our guests, is this advent of the ESG conversation, or environmental social governance. And you guys have recently worked on an ESG strategy for the company, People, Planet, and Performance. Did I have that right?
That's correct.
Really interested in learning about both the origins of that and then the process. Understanding that corporate strategies are not an easy thing. You said yourself you were a part of strategic planning for the company, and be interested how that played a role in developing ESG too. But what led Koppers to having to develop or wanting to develop an ESG strategy? What were some of the origins of that?
Well, when I took over as Chief Sustainability Officer, one of the concepts I wanted to get across was that sustainability is much bigger than the environment. A lot of people think of sustainability, they think about environmental protection, they think about greenhouse gases, but there's so much more to it. There's this social component. It's about taking care of people, your own employees, your communities, your customers, the people who come in contact with your products, and it's also about governance. So we have to, Koppers as a company has to do the right things. We have to perform in order to continue to be a viable company and be able to produce the goods and services and employ the people that we employ. So those three pieces all fit together: environmental, social, and governance, ESG. So when we were looking at how we would communicate this, how we get this concept across that it's bigger than just the environment, we thought, well, we have to use something about each of those areas in the words that we use when we talk about sustainability. And so we came up with this concept of environmental is the planet.
Yep.
The social piece of it is all about taking care of people. It's about making sure your own employees are taken care of, making sure your communities are safe, and making sure your products are safe for users. So that was all about people. So planet and people. And then we took the governance piece and we said, what is it that connects to the people that will be hearing this? And it's really about the performance of the company, because like I said, we have to be a viable company in order to continue to employ people, in order to make our products. So it came out as People, Planet, and Performance. And coincidentally, we were thinking about our
Of the strategy?
The strategy at the same time, and how it connects to our values. And so we had a number of values, that all companies do, but we said, let's think about our values in terms of this whole concept of sustainability, and it really makes sense for us to say, these are just our values: people, planet, and performance. Those are the values of our company.
And so really a value-driven approach. Like you had those values, they preceded the strategy, and it was a matter of embedding those values into the strategy's development.
Right, and embedding the concepts of sustainability into the values too, so that they go hand in hand now.
Just from a mechanical standpoint, developing that strategy, what's the effort required? I mean, there's a lot of companies, S&B and S&B USA included, where we're on these first steps of the ESG journey, learning about, we have the values, we have kind of existing business strategy, but we're really at one of those nascent stages. And a lot of our listeners here, the Dirt Podcast, are in that phase, right? Where they know it's the right thing to do, but they're trying to take those first steps of educating employees and the like. But for you guys that have been a little bit more mature in this space, what was kind of the first putting pen to paper and talking to employees? Like what were some of the first initial steps that you took?
So we made the decision from the outset to involve employees in this. This was not going to be something that was developed by a team at corporate. This had to be something that reached out into the company and that employees got to have a voice in. So what we did was we did a materiality analysis, and anybody who's familiar with sustainability will understand that. You look at kind of all the aspects of sustainability and figure out which ones are material to your company.
Can you explain materiality a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I can or not.
Give it your best shot.
So you take all these aspects. There's lists and lists of aspects of environmental safety, communities, products, and you do interviews and you look at what is important to people. You interview people within the company. We interviewed board members. We interviewed our customers. We interviewed people in our communities to find out what's important to them, and then you kind of do a heat map and say these are the things that show up most often that are important, and those become your material issues.
Got it.
So we did that, and then we also looked at the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Oh, the SDGs. That's coming up. Yep.
So we got a group together and we looked at all the SDGs and we said, which ones of these can we really impact?
Yeah.
We picked 10 of them. And then we looked at how our material issues and the SDGs kind of combined.
So there's like a Venn diagram that overlaps?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we came up with 10 areas that we wanted to work on. And so I'm getting back to getting the employees involved. We developed teams. We call them Functional Area Sustainability Teams, FAST teams.
Yeah, all right, I got it.
We had to have an acronym. So, and each FAST team has a topic area, and the FAST teams are led by someone who's in that functional area. So, our energy team is led by somebody in our engineering group that has, background in energy, and our water team is led by someone in our environmental group. But they reach out into the company, and they get people who might not be in that area, but have an interest, and then they go through a process of looking at, what's important to us, how do we interact with this aspect, what should our goals be around it, and that's really the process we're in now, is developing those goals based on kind of the material impacts that we have.
Got it.
And that will form the basis of our strategy.
So you're in the working of the development of the strategy right now, so you don't have kind of a final process. So
That's right.
So you're literally like knee deep in it.
We are.
That's exciting. One of the things that's really important, as I was reading through some of the materials, is for any industrial company or construction company like ours at S&B is safety. Safety is really kind of a paramount component of any type of intensive process. Talk about that in terms of like the culture that you guys have developed with regards to safety and how that plays into the development of the strategy.
So safety has been, like I mentioned with sustainability, it's been a continuum for us. So anybody who works in industry or in construction knows there are lots and lots of safety rules that you have to follow. So that's where we started. Let's make sure that we're in compliance with the rules.
Yep. So again, compliance is like the base.
That's the base.
That's the base level.
That's the base level. So once we were in compliance and we looked at it and we said, well, what do we do to move ourselves beyond this? And that's where we came up with this concept that we call zero harm. And that's really, kind of self-explanatory. We don't want to harm our employees, our communities, the environment, and we think it's possible to do that.
Wow.
So we started a behavioral-based safety program, which means you get your employees involved in discussing safety. So it's not so much about you have to do X, Y, and Z because that's what the rules say. It's more about asking them how can you do this in a more safe manner, and then using what they tell you to re-engineer your processes.
Interesting.
And it's all about going beyond compliance. So we do things like we have a process safety management team. Now, our facilities are not, process safety management is an OSHA standard. We don't have any facilities. I think we have one facility that's a process safety management facility. But we are taking those concepts out to all of our facilities so that you manage. Process safety management is all about managing every aspect of the process so that you know that it's
of the
controlled. Manufacturing process
right.
To make sure that it's controlled at every step. So we're taking that, it's really a discipline around how you manage a process. So we're taking that discipline to facilities that aren't required to do it, but we think that's the right thing to do.
Interesting. Two different kind of directions with that makes me think about. One is, what do you have internally in terms of like continuous education in that process? Because we're always learning from, sadly, mistakes or incidents. What does that look like? And the second piece of that is, you mentioned the role of the community. How do these efforts extend beyond the factory walls or beyond the office walls into the community?
So in terms of training, so there is a lot of training involved, but a lot of it is not necessarily formal training where you're sitting in a classroom with an instructor. It's kind of on-the-job training. So a supervisor will be talking to an employee, and they'll be talking about what that employee is doing. The supervisor's trying to learn what we can do differently to make the employee's job more safe, and the employee is learning what what can be changed, what he's doing that is making him less safe, and what he can be doing that's making him more safe. So it's an informal education process, but it's a process of continuous communication about safety. It's really a culture change. It's what we're really trying to get people to do is think about safety in everything they do, and almost make it just part of the way they work rather than a separate discipline.
Interesting. And then the community, like how do you take that message out to the community? And that goes beyond safety, I know, but like in terms of that educational process and awareness.
So the biggest thing with communities is just talking to them.
Yeah.
A lot of manufacturing facilities have keep your heads below the fence line and make sure nobody knows what we're doing in here. That's the wrong approach. We want people to understand what we're doing. So when they hear a sound in the facility or they see us doing something, they don't think it's they know what we're doing and they don't automatically think it's something that's wrong, or they feel comfortable coming to us and asking us about it.
Right.
So probably 15 years ago, we started instituting what we call community advisory panels.
Interesting.
More formal
around
way.
Manufacturing facilities?
Around manufacturing facilities. It's a more formal way to reach out to the community, get people in, give them tours of the facility, make them comfortable with what we're doing, and make them comfortable with coming to us so that when they have questions, they can ask those questions. And that it also just creates a link between the community and the company.
That's interesting. Is that kind of going back to some of the lead-in about Koppers? I mean, does that also help just create a sense of pride for the community in terms of the presence of the company and the value added that the company brings from an economic beyond an economic benefit? Actually, I would say. I
think it brings an understanding of that.
Yeah.
We also encourage our facilities to interact with the communities in volunteerism, in donations, and being involved in their communities.
To not be a passive player in the community.
Right. And so I think that develops a lot of mutual respect when the employees from the company are we have facilities where the employees go and read to elementary school children.
Yeah.
And we have facilities where employees do river cleanups, and they do all manner of things, but it connects them to the community.
Have you seen that in kind of your career trajectory too? I'd be interested. Like, there's, we're talking about the phase of like environmental health and safety, and then there has also been a period, a couple years back, where you had CSR, corporate social responsibility, and now the ESG conversation is one where we're starting to lead into database decisions, performance metrics, decision support tools. It's getting more numerically driven, let's say. Are those, and CSR is a part of that, but is there a struggle or a tension there between corporate social responsibility and ESG, or is it more of a kumbaya that exists between the two?
Well, the only way you're going to communicate with a large audience is through reporting.
Yeah.
So you have to do that.
Transparency.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's really what the Corporate Social Responsibility Report is about, making sure, or trying to get to a larger audience, to communicate with them what we're doing. And there is a lot involved in that, I'll be honest, developing the data and reporting on it. But it is all about reporting on the things you're doing. And so the things that you're doing, the important work that you're doing in your facilities or in your communities, that's really what the core of ESG is about.
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the things too that you guys have been a leader on, you mentioned this earlier, is about waste and recycling and the product development. So the P of planet. Talk about some of the innovative things that you've all done in that waste management cycle. I mean, I think that's, like we said in the earlier on, like that's a core of the company. You've been a leader in that for so long, and now everybody's trying to like catch up. I mean, what have you been working on, and then what keeps you out in front, I think it would be interesting to learn.
Yeah, so you mentioned the word circularity before, and if the listeners haven't heard that word before, it's becoming more and more popular. So it's about finding uses for products at their end of life, and that can either be refurbishing them and using them in the same context, or finding a different use for them. So, we mentioned earlier that a large percentage of our raw materials come from either repurposed or recycled or renewable materials. So a large input to our raw material base is wood, which is a renewable material. So
by its very nature, in some regards.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what we're looking at now is kind of we're pretty strong on the front end. What we're looking at now is the back end, about how we find ways to reuse our products. So most of the products that come out of service are wood products. So we have a division of our company that goes out and collects railroad ties.
Wow.
And brings them back to a facility where we process them, and then we sell them to industry to use in boilers, in industrial boilers.
Oh.
So they're actually
as a biofuel?
As a biofuel. So they're actually using them as a replacement for fossil fuel.
Yeah.
For energy use. So we are displacing the use of fossil fuels by reusing the wood for its energy content. So that's good, but what we really want to do is find another use for the wood. And so we have some research going on about how we can bring the wood back, extract any remaining chemicals that are in it, and then use the biomass in some other capacity, either in a filtering capacity or an ag capacity or some other capacity that we can use the biomass. So we have some research going on. We can't do that yet, but we are working on it.
That's interesting too. Is one of the things that I've been as I've stepped into this new role with S&B USA. One of the things that's been really fun for me and interesting is learning some new terms like joint ventures. And is that a piece of the work that you're doing in terms of transitioning from some of your traditional products, looking into like the energy space or new types of frontiers that Koppers products typically don't operate in? I guess that's part of my question, I guess, is as you look at circular models, do you see new supply chains, new distribution markets, et cetera, start to form up, or new partnerships that can be developed in terms of the development or the distribution of the products that you have?
Sure. The reuse of the wood material is a big priority for the railroads. So there is an average of 19 million railroad ties that get replaced every year.
Wow.
And so those 19 million ties have to have a home. So the railroads have a big interest in what happens to those ties. So there's a kind of a partnership there to say, let's find a solution for these ties.
So that's like CSX or Norfolk Southern, et cetera. Okay.
On our carbon materials side, our products go primarily into aluminum, steel, those types of things. But one of the new markets that has been developing is electric vehicles. And electric vehicles obviously need batteries.
Yep.
And batteries need carbon. And we're a carbon company. So we have been working on what we're calling advanced carbon, because the carbon that goes into batteries is a little bit different than the carbon that we produce for the aluminum company. So we have a couple patents pending on advanced carbon that can be used in batteries. So it enhances the electrochemical properties of the battery or extends the battery's life.
Oh, wow.
And, most people, when they think of batteries, now think of EV, electric vehicles, but, batteries are all around us. I mean, my lawnmower is a battery-powered lawnmower. So the batteries that you put in those types of equipment, they also have carbon in them. And so the battery market is big, and it's still under development, and these kind of innovations just move it forward.
Right. That's interesting. I mean, we at S&B, we have two kind of similar types of plays. One is on the energy generation and storage side. So we operate a battery that services the California ISO, a 100 megawatt battery, I think is the size of it. And you start to see in that space the need for storage, particularly because of the growth of renewables, whether it's solar, wind, or biomass or others, need some sort of a balancing capacity on the grid, as well as building resilience to the grid is the other piece of that. Likewise, we're also working on the electric vehicle deployment side. And one of the things that we're seeing there is, just the need to also recycle batteries and, like you're saying, extend the life. We had a meeting just the other day with folks from Argonne National Labs, which is based outside of Chicago, talking exactly about that research. Like, where do you see this going, and like what's the market potential for it? But the thing that's been amazing is the acceleration of both those spaces, both in terms of battery storage for the grid, and potential deployment areas, as well as how that then integrates with vehicle electrification. So if you're a utility like a Duquesne Light, Kevin Walker was here a couple months ago, we were talking exactly about this, about the need for more battery deployments, one to kind of ease the grid stability as we electrify everything, because we need to kind of go there. And so that's fascinating that you guys are starting to see this full cycle that comes around from a railroad tie, a tree to a railroad tie to battery storage solutions.
Right.
Now, do you have an R&D team that, like, what does that look like? Who are the folks that are thinking about some of this stuff? And as a sustainability officer, do you get to, stick your finger kind of in their work because you're seeing this from an ESG standpoint?
Yeah, they're way smarter than I am. So we have an R&D team that works on on the carbon side of our business, and they're actually here in Harmarville,
awesome.
Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And we have an R&D team that works on the wood chemical side of our business, and they are in outside of Atlanta.
Okay.
But we have a lot of work that goes on between them because there's just they're just chemistries that kind of cross over. So. Yeah. But it's interesting because a lot of the ideas that have come up actually come from our operations people. I mean, they know the materials.
Again, go back to interviewing the employees and that side of operations.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting.
So they know the materials. They know what they're processing. They know how much more they can push it. They know how they could change it a little bit, and that's where the idea for the advanced carbon actually came from, was from the operations side, to say we could change this a little bit, and maybe it would be useful. Maybe it could be used in batteries. And so we had got an R&D project going on that.
That's fascinating, and it just underscores the importance of like employee engagement.
Absolutely,
and how, particularly when people are touching a process every day, you get a sense of where that innovation or that process could be improved, right?
Mm-hmm.
Given up, we're coming up here on the end of our time together. One of the things I wanted to leave with, I guess, is, given all these advancements and the excitement in this space, where do you see, both on one side the opportunities, on the other side, what are some of the challenges on the horizon, both for Koppers and kind of your industry, but also in terms of the advancement of your ESG and the people, planet, and performance strategy? Talk about what's up ahead, and how are you going to overcome some of these hurdles, but also what are you really excited about?
So I think as an industry, our industry and industry in general, and as a community, we've only touched the surface of sustainability and what sustainability really means, and how everything is connected. And that, to me, that's really what sustainability is about. As a manufacturing company, we're connected to our employees, we're connected to our communities, to our customers, to future customers, to future markets. We're all connected, and we just touched the surface of how we make those connections and how we bring other social issues into that whole mix. I'm really excited to have more people involved in this whole concept, to have more companies thinking about what's really possible for themselves and how they can make connections to make things possible for other people. It's just really exciting to reach outside of just we have to be in compliance with these rules to we can really change the world if we think about how we do that.
That's awesome. It makes it a more dynamic place, right? It's solution oriented.
Right.
That's great. Well, Leslie, I want to thank you so much for being with us here on the DIRT podcast and sharing your insights and wisdom, and learn a little bit more about the Koppers company here, based in Pittsburgh. How many years has it been that the company's based in Pittsburgh?
Well, the company's always been based in Pittsburgh.
But the founding has been 100?
Well, the Koppers company was founded in the 1917, 18 range.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, many years of continued success, and we appreciate the work that you're doing and being a leader in the ESG space and sustainability right here in Pittsburgh, PA.
Thank you.
So thanks so much. And thank you for listening in to the DIRT podcast. And thanks to our friends here from the Center for Media Innovation at Point Park University. Once again, I'm your host, Grant Ervin from S&B USA, and we'll check you next time on the DIRT. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.